Hello, hello. Welcome back to another week's podcast of Free to Speak and Think. So this week, we don't have a guest, and that's a change. I know that last week I had said that I would post the second half of the discussion with Brian McDonald. However, there was something that came up this last week. And so I don't know how much I'm going to edit this video, if at all. So this may be another behind the scenes video. This is 10 p.m. or just before 10 p.m. on Friday before this video is probably going to post. So I'll just record it and see how it goes. So here's why I'm posting this video. I saw several videos with several different people giving their opinions on the recent statements by the White House, Biden administration, and Secretary of Education, basically about the whole forgiveness of student debt. So I'm going to go into a little bit of that. That's the topic. I'll probably put that as the title, but we will specifically be breaking down some arguments that I've heard, pro, cons, for it, against it, things like that. Some statistics that I've seen. I can link the videos that I've seen down below, and you can see the sources that I'm going off of, just off of memory. I don't have them in front of me, but this is a very raw, personal video for me. And so I'm hoping that I can not only share my perspective, my bias, the reality of my situation, but also so that hopefully we can grow in our understanding and context, our understanding of the context of the situation, and arrive at a better outcome overall. So I've heard many speakers about it. I've watched several media clips and people effectively on radio broadcasts, talk shows, things like that, interviews, talking both on the right or the conservative side of the spectrum, the left, libertarian, independent sources. And I've heard many different points of view. And that is why I feel that there was some merit to bring it on this podcast, is because this podcast is free to speak. And so it's more my response to what other people have said. I would encourage you to go do your own investigation and research on this topic, and everyone's going to have their own opinion about it. Maybe your mind's already made up, maybe it's not, but I'm hoping that we can all learn a little bit just by having the conversation. On a side note, I hope you guys like the new logo for the podcast. And there's a background, so hopefully this might stay. I might do it as a static image, but it's difficult with toddlers and pets and busy schedules and health conditions to maintain a clean house. And so this is hopefully either less distracting, or will be better long-term. But that is why the background is different than it has been. So I guess I'll get right into it. The most recent perspective that I heard on it was Larry Elder. I follow a handful of his stuff. I know that he was likely going to be the next governor of California if Gavin Newsom was recalled, because he was the highest candidate with the individual popularity, even if more than 50% of people did not want him specifically to be the governor. And so I know that that was in contention. So that's fairly recent in terms of current events, and he aligns more on the conservative libertarian side of the spectrum. So typically he and I would have similar perspectives about the world, about economy, and he kind of drew up or ignited a fire or a passion in me to talk about this specifically. I mean, overall, I know how I'm going to be affected by this, and I'll get into that a little bit later so that you guys will know as well, so you can take with a grain of salt what I'm going to say. But my individual situation should not necessarily change my opinion about if it's best overall. And so I want to remain objective in that fact. And I may have some facts wrong. I may have some context wrong, and I may be wrong in my outcome or my conclusion so far. So this is the process as a verbal processor. This is my process of arriving at that conclusion. And so hopefully you guys can grow in some value from that as well. So breaking down a few things that he had said just recently, I believe it was within the last 24 hours, that he had posted a video about it. But I'm sorry, I'll try to mute my mic if I have to clear my throat. I know it's a bad habit I have. And forewarning, I'm sorry, there's so many tangents. Forewarning, I did not take my ADHD meds today. It's pretty late in the day, and so it can keep me awake if I take them too late. And I wasn't sure I was going to be recording today. I was thinking I was going to be editing the second half of the last podcast part 2 to post for Monday. But I felt this was more important and more urgent. And on the topic of university or public education and the inherent problems with it that we've been experiencing in the last few decades of inflation and cost and need or necessity for specifically institutionalized public education and higher education, or contrary to just becoming educated, say, through self-propelled ventures or self-taught. And so Larry had specifically used some statistics that I believe that he had misinterpreted. And this is not taking away any respect that I have for him or his opinions. I still think we agree on most things. And so whoever sees this, or if he sees this, I want to make sure that I give appropriate context to what he was saying and why, and make sure that we understand that first before I counter it. And so some statistics he was bringing up about this situation in general or overall, and I'll get into other arguments or people that I've heard speaking about it, but this one really kind of hit a nerve, I guess. And so that's what was the final straw in determining that I record the video today or tonight. But some statistics that he had brought up were purposed, I believe. He brought them up to show that the majority of student debt held was by, as he phrased it, quote, rich white Americans, and that this bill was, quote, disproportionately benefiting, quote, rich white Americans, in that because they hold most of the debt, and this is a debt forgiveness program, that they are inherently the ones who are benefiting from this. However, the statistics specifically said the upper 40% of higher income households of all income, so the higher end 40% holds 60% of all student debt, and the lower 40% holds 20% of all student debt, which means the middle 20% holds 20%. So already that's disproportionate in itself, just because there's a higher percentage of overall debt that is held by individuals with access to higher income, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the reality of the situation, being if you have access to more income, or you live in a higher income area, or if you have more, say, aspirations, you might be more likely to make a higher income or take on more risk. And college is certainly a risk. It's a known risk in that you take on debt knowing you're going to have to pay off the debt beforehand, or with the belief that it will be worth it in the end, because you will ideally obtain a degree, and then that degree will then lead you to a higher income, which would then be more than worth it to pay off the debt. And even that statement right there, or that run-on sentence, makes a lot of assumptions, and many of those have changed in the last 15 or 20 years, especially. I remember when I was in middle school, it was about $8,000 a year for in-state university tuition and $2,000 a year for community college. Within just half a decade, by the time I was looking at colleges and had graduated from high school, that had dramatically changed. It was about $20,000 to $24,000 for in-state attendance to university. I went to Western Oregon, and it was about $8,000 for community colleges. And so given that context, that is much higher undertaking of debt for potentially the same, if not better, if not worse, the same outcome of a degree, or more educated than the people who came before you, basically, who had paid less. So within just a short period of time, it had tripled. And I believe now, as far as what I've been told or researched recently, tuition is upwards of $40,000. And that's insane for a single year of university. And of course, there's aid and there's grants and there's scholarships. And there are certainly times when college is more beneficial and maybe even necessary, depending on the degree field that you're going into. But as I have become aware of, and what many people are now realizing, is that we were not given accurate information going through the public school system between K through 12 post 2000, let's just say in this millennia. It may have been true for people before us that college is worth it. college degrees were rare. There were different people going to college for different reasons, getting different degrees, and what was being taught at the high school and the college level was different than what's being taught now to some degree. And there were also less degrees that one could pursue overall, because now there are many more options for degree paths. And in my beliefs or understanding, I could be wrong about that. But overall, the circumstances seem to have changed in that it's not best for most people to attend university. Even more so, it's not best for most people to take on that much debt to attend university. As with many other things in society, say pharmaceuticals or the cost of medical care, healthcare, the cost of university tuition, the cost of many different things. Currently, I submitted an article on Vogel.media that includes more context. I just don't have it right in front of me right now. But there are several things in society that have exploded in terms of how high the cost has gotten for the same product, the same thing, and in such a short period of time. So just overall inflation, but this is outrageous because of how fast inflation is happening in certain markets. Oh, housing market. So the housing market, the university tuition, healthcare costs, pharmaceutical drugs, especially, and then many other places as well. But especially those four areas have outpaced inflation to astronomical rates. Not only that, but wages have also not kept up with inflation. So if you're taking on risk in the form of debt that doesn't even go away if you claim bankruptcy or if you file for bankruptcy. If you are under the understanding that you're going to make more money having a degree, that's probably true. You're probably going to make more money if you have a degree than if you don't, depending on several other factors. However, are you going to make enough that it's going to be worth it to take on the debt? And I don't think that's true, especially now. Wages at the bottom are rising. We'll get into relative later, but wages at the bottom are rising and wages in the middle are not, and especially not rising to the same degree. The startup costs to getting a degree are incredibly high, but even more so, you may not get a degree. And that's one of the things that I think Larry's missing in this context. Sorry, I keep jumping all around. I hope that whoever's listening can follow this chaotic mess, but he had said that only or disproportionately rich white people are getting into colleges, but he kept emphasizing prestigious universities. Out of all students attending all universities across the entire US and all student loans being given out, sure, it might be true, and it probably is true, that the majority of the flat amount of the total amount of loans in terms of dollar amounts are awarded to or given to are offered to or held by, that debt is held by students attending these prestigious universities. If it costs, say, 8 or 15,000, I'm not sure. If it costs 40,000 to attend, say, a private university or a public university, but it costs 200,000 a year to attend some other prestigious university or more. Of course, each person who takes out debt is likely going to have to take out a higher dollar amount of debt. And that's significant in terms of the overall percentage of the debt held by the people, the low minority of people who actually attend these prestigious universities. There are many, many, many universities across the US, something like 2,600, 20 or 3,600. I'm not even sure at this point. I don't even remember the statistic I'd seen at one point. And there's a very small percentage of prestigious universities with that level of prestige or brand name, Ivy League schools, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, MIT, things like that. And there are a handful, but that's not the majority. And that's not the majority of individuals who have loans. It might be the majority of debt held by those who have loans, but it's not the majority of people who have those loans. And the debt forgiveness that was proposed was a flat $10,000 up to $10,000, making up to $125,000 per year individually, or $250,000 a year for the household or a couple. I'll get into more about that, why that number matters later. But also $20,000 up to $20,000 awarded to those who received Pell Grants. Pell Grants were awarded to lower income. And so there is more relief available and offered to those who are low income, just on a flat rate. So that's one thing. So there is already more income just built into the plan that the White House released or referenced or said is coming. There's more flat relief for lower income individuals based on the current loan that they have available. If they have, say, only $7,000 in loans, there's only $7,000 of aid, but it's 100%. If they have $20,000, it's $20,000 in aid, it's 100%. But for people who are making, say, $125,000, who are $250,000 in debt of student loan debt, or $600,000, regardless of what that amount is, which may be 40 different individuals who have student debt, but the same dollar amount, they're only receiving $10,000. So the total percentage of that debt is significantly lower than low income. Higher income individuals likely either one, didn't need the loans in the first place because they had access to other funds, scholarships, or daddy's money, or whatever the case may be. Either they didn't need to take out any loans, or the loans were offered to their parents, because that was the situation that happened with me. I was claimed as a dependent because my mom was a tax preparer and she said it would be better. Looking back, it wasn't. Reality is, if I had claimed single or filed as single, I would certainly have received more aid in terms of grants, and I would have actually been able to continue my education instead of having to drop out because I couldn't afford it, because part of my student loan aid package was awarded to my parents in the form of a loan that they didn't accept. I'm not saying that's not a wise play on their part, and I'm not saying it didn't work out in the end for the better. I'm saying that I had to drop out of university with debt without getting a degree based on something that was not my choice. And the reality of that is I didn't have a degree for a long time. Now I have an associate's because I transferred credits and finished at a community college. But I didn't have a degree that earned more money to then pay off that debt. I was sold debt. Debt is a product that is widely sold. Want a car? Great. You're not buying a car. You're buying debt. And the debt is what gives you a car, but you're buying debt. So that matters, because my situation was one where I fully understood that it was a loan I was taking out and I was going to have to pay off. However, I went in with the belief and understanding that I was going to graduate, because I was indoctrinated since as early as I was in public education that college was, quote, just the next step in the process of education, and that it's better to go to college because you will have an end result. You will have an end result of making more money for having gone to college and having gotten a degree than if you hadn't. And that's why I chose an in-state university. I felt I would thrive more with smaller class sizes, something where I wasn't living at home, but I was close enough to home, things like that. So there were reasons why I chose that university specifically. But ultimately, I was sold debt and I was sold university. I was sold on the university system based on 13 years of indoctrination in a system with parents who believed it was worth it because it was worth it for them, not for me. And that's hard for me to understand. I'm not blaming them. I'm understanding that this is the reality for many, many people. Many people. Not my exact situation, but where they were sold on a product of university based on a false premise that it would be worth it if they went to university and took out loans, based on a false premise that college was affordable because of financial application for student aid, FAFSA. And college is not affordable. It's just not for most people. And it's not necessary for many people. Even if it's necessary for a position that you want, it might still not be affordable at its current rates if you're attending the university in person. I mean, there's many other factors, but it's just not affordable. And that is a reality that we have to understand and acknowledge. So why are people even having to take out debt in the first place? Well, obviously, it's a startup cost. If you want to start a business, you need somewhere to do business. You need product to sell. You need an idea. There's startup cost to everything. And so this is a startup cost to your career for the rest of your life. And so you need to become educated. Well, who's going to educate you? What are they going to educate you with? Is that going to take a lot of hours? Is that going to take a lot of time? There are legitimate costs to becoming educated. And then there are illegitimate costs of becoming educated. Illegitimate costs are, say, a $2.7 million stadium that doesn't bring in more revenue than the amount of money it pays out in scholarships and full rides and budgets to coaches. And that is one reality that is significant in terms of rising costs of university, because the professors' incomes have not increased, yet you have some coaches making more in their salary than the entire academic budget at a school overall. And because sports are so widely recognized and followed and often a big marketing tool for universities, they invest a lot of money into sports. And sports are a big pull on getting youth or kids or young adults to come to their universities. It's not just school, it's you're coming here to do sports and school, but sports. And so I understand some need for sports or some desire for sports at universities. But many universities, sports are where the money goes, not academics, not to the students. And the students are subsidizing the sports and the celebrities effectively at the school and the brand name. And that's not improving education. Actually, it's taking focus and attention off of why you're there. Are you at university to party and do drugs and drink and play sports? Or are you at university to study, to learn, and to grow your career? Some people, that sports might be a career. That's not the overwhelming majority of people that go to college. It doesn't turn into reality as far as a full-time career for them. And that's one factor that has caused rates at universities to rise. Obviously, not all universities have sports, and not all universities are subject to that being the sole reason why their costs have increased. And there's outliers, obviously, that this doesn't apply to. But overall, that's one factor it's contributed to it. And so this is why I'm taking that approach, is to understand how to fix it. We have to understand the problem and what led to it in the first place. Also, FAFSA has caused this. The school system has caused this, has caused infinite demand put upon the system because they shame you if you can't get into college. Not even if you don't have a degree. They shame you if you can't get into college. You're uneducated. You're poor. You're a minority. You should be able to access higher education. But people who aren't going to thrive in that environment and who have a very low likelihood of actually getting a degree and focusing on why they're there and doing and getting the most out of it, and then turning that into a career that can then afford to pay back the debt. Also, on top of that, you have the reality of some majors just don't turn into careers or some degree paths don't turn into careers that pay enough for that debt to be paid off, especially in a climate where everything is going up. Gas was nearly $6 a gallon here and $9 a gallon somewhere else close to here. Life is getting more expensive overall. Incomes may be going up a bit, but not enough. And I'm not advocating necessarily for incomes to go up, because that might not be the solution and that might not lead us to a better outcome. But the reality is everything is more expensive than it was, especially relative to incomes. And incomes have not really changed for most people relative to the cost of life. In the 70s, a house may have been $20,000, $27,000, but a full-time income was $9,000. So 3x the annual salary pre-tax. Now, an annual salary for an individual might be, say, $42,000 or $50,000 or even $60,000 or even $80,000. Regardless, starting houses are $400,000, $465,000. That's at least 5x, if not 8x. And so someone who might have been able to buy a home only making $9,000, let's say higher interest rate, say 17, 19% interest rate instead of a 3 or a 7% interest rate. Regardless, 3x versus what we have now, which is 5 to 8x. 500% the cost it was before. 800% relatively, 8 times more expensive. That makes housing unaffordable. When wages were, say, $13 an hour, $15 an hour, and college was $8,000, I mean, you're still making $26,000. So that means, or per year, say pre-tax, an $8,000 university is a third, just about a third, under a third of that. If universities now are $40,000, and your wage is 40,000. That's an entire year's worth, which means, again, 3x what it used to be. The ratio of 1 to 3 is now 1 to 1. Regardless of making double or effectively double from 20-ish, 26 to 40-ish, 46, whatever it is, of making almost twice as much money, tuition is infinitely more. Healthcare, infinitely more. There are many problems with how much things cost now. And the answer may not just be as simple as give money to those who can't afford it, because that's going to continue demand in a system that's already overinflated in price. We need to get to a point where there's less demand on the system. Less demand will lead to lower prices. Less demand will lead to innovation that will lead to better quality and lower prices. We need less demand on the university system. That is what is going to fix the price problem. We need less demand on the healthcare system. And now how how is that even possible? How do you get less demand for health? Well, there are many ways to do that. Less demand on the healthcare system means you go to the doctor less, means you take more responsibility over your personal health, means that we're more honest and researching things that actually benefit our health and keep us healthy. Less demand in terms of putting ourselves less at risk for need for care, for treatment, and they don't even cure us. The system doesn't want to cure us. They make more money by keeping us sick. So they'd rather just give us a pill, because the pill, they make known the side effects of the pill, and you took it knowing fully well what those side effects were. And even if you attempted a lawsuit, Big Pharma is huge and you're never going to get anywhere with it. And even if you do, it's just chump change to them. It doesn't even matter, because they're making so much money. Every time you go to the doctor, they prescribe something for you to take that keeps you sick, doesn't fix you. Some things might. Antibiotics are going to kill bacteria if you have a bacterial infection. There are some things that are going to stand to prevent further infection and viruses. There are so many things to consider in context that if you don't give it a lot of thought, you could easily believe you're at the right conclusion that will actually make it worse. And that's not saying that you're misintentioned or that you don't have good intentions, or that you're just trying to misinform people, or that you're not genuine, but that there's context that matters. And so all that being said, Larry Elder had used some statistics that effectively pushed half of what he said was accurate, but half of what he said misinterpreted the context. And people need help. And people are losing the ability to help themselves, whether it be parents who are not involved or invested, or parents who are uneducated because they were part of a system that's now pushing even more indoctrination on children. I'm not saying it's the parents' fault. I'm not saying it's the children's fault. I'm saying that we need to look at reality as it is right now and understand there are problems that we need to be very meticulous in how we address and how we approach them to not make them worse. And many things that are being proposed are making things worse. Sure, I will benefit. I will be one who stands to benefit from relief. I got Pell Grant. I have about 13,400, maybe 13,600 currently that I still have yet to pay off. That's going to be relieved, probably. We'll see. And that is going to benefit us immensely, because in the past, we've tried to get housing when both my wife and I were working full time before we had our son, and we couldn't even get approved for an amount that was high enough to get any house within reasonable commuting distance to our employer, because we had debt. Our debt to income ratio, our DTI, was too high. Therefore, with both of us working full time, we could not afford a house. Even if that mortgage would have been less than what we're paying currently for rent, or for the next 30 years of rent, we were not approved, because the reality of debt's a problem. Debt's a reality that most people might find themselves in, and that's tough. We were in $43,000 of debt before COVID. We had taken out $10,000 at a 2.99% interest rate just to get by when we knew that I was injured and not able to work. It was a super low interest rate, but we understood that life cost money. After that, then we'd gotten some money from the short-term disability and the workman's comp insurance for a couple months while they were doing their processing of the claim. Tiny bit of money from the settlement, and then some money from the government in the form of relief checks or unemployment because I could still work. It was just nowhere was hiring or limitations that even if jobs opened up, I couldn't perform the physical requirements. I didn't meet the physical requirements. And therefore I was looking for work. And even more so, this is also a reality, I was paid to stay home over $500 a week pre-tax to stay home. Not only could I not work in most capacities, or at least most capacities that I could gain, that I could acquire employment, but I was paid enough to legitimately warrant staying home, which was great for a time because I was able to invest more in my health and recovery, and I was able to invest more in my young child and more in my family and my marriage. And obviously it comes with trade-offs, as everything in life does. There are pros and cons. There are things you give up to get other things. And it was in our best interest personally, not in the context of the whole. And I'm not saying everyone should have done this or that we even should have done this, but it was in our best interest at the time to continue to look for work, but continue to take what was being offered to us. And that was how we were able to get our debt down. It was unearned income in terms of disability pay, short-term disability, and relief checks, things like that. And my wife was able to work. I couldn't find employment and I needed surgery. And I am still impaired in terms of function, and I'm still restricted in terms of my work restrictions and capacity. And that's just the reality of the future for us right now. And I'm not saying that's permanent, but we need to acknowledge that reality if we are going to look forward to the future. We have to understand what resources we have access to now and the conditions of our current situation to identify the best possible opportunity, best path forward. And that's the culmination of everything that's happened, is that we need to change the way we're thinking to one of, this is the reality now. What was better 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 20 years ago may not be what's better today. May not be what's better today. It may be what's better today, but it may not. So we can't afford to find ourselves in a mindset where we are believing that because this was better then, it's what's better now. Or because this was what was best then, it's what's best now. Because that is alone is not warrant enough to say that is what's best now. Because conditions are different. Reality is different. The present economy, the present situation when it comes to inflated costs and income is different now. And it's hard for a lot of people. And this bill benefits a lot of people and comes with trade-offs. So we have to look at it with a holistic perspective. There are going to be some penalties, and there are going to be some people that feel it was unfair, that it may have been unfair, that they had to pay off their loans and other people don't. It may be unfair that some people have to be forgiven for past actions while other people don't. It may be unfair that society grants benefits or rewards to some people and not to others. No one says life is fair, because it isn't. It can't be. Literally, everyone is born into a different situation, and everyone has different interests, different value, different opportunities. And we can't ever guarantee any degree of fair. So I don't believe that that's the best metric to judge this bill on. There are other valid and warranted metrics, but emotions should not be what are determining if this is a good or bad or necessary or not necessary bill. Economy matters. Inflation matters. Opportunity matters. Education matters. I'm not saying that the current system of our public education system is what's best for most people to become educated. Hopefully, this podcast is giving you, the viewer, an opportunity to become more educated than you already are and grow in your understanding and knowledge and value that you're accumulating through watching this. And some people need help. Most people need help at some point in their life, whether it be a mentor, whether it be to be an apprentice. Everyone needs help at some point in their life. Even those who are most successful needed help at one point in their life. And anyone who claims to have done it on their own doesn't understand the reality of their situation. If it takes a village to raise a child, how can that child then later say, I did it on my own? There are some things that you probably did on your own, and it was probably very difficult for you. And looking back, would you wish that someone had been with you through that? Of course. Would you wish that someone had taken you under their wing and said, let me do everything I can do to help you get to a better spot in your life? And that that may be reality for some of you, that some of you had that experience where someone said, you're my project to grow and build into something better and amazing and reach your full potential. But it was something that they had to invest in you, something you didn't have, something you needed to grow, but something you didn't have that allowed for opportunity. And this bill allows for some opportunity and takes away some opportunity as well. It does cost something to some people, but it's helping a lot of people. I'm not saying I'm right. I don't know. I don't know what the ramifications of this will be. I don't know what incentives it'll then provide for public education to change or not change, or keep inflating prices, or for more demand to be put on the system because people are not even going to believe that they have to pay off the loans, or even more taxation and less earning potential. Who knows? There could be all kinds of negatives that result from this. Currently, the reality, if this passes and if it happens, many people will receive relief that may or that should open opportunities that were not available to them before. Maybe by no true fault of their own. They put their name on a paper or typed it into a box online saying that they understood they'll have to pay the loan back. But even when I would do that, that was once a year. And there were 3 different disbursements of loans per year, per term, or per quarter, one per quarter, for 3 trimesters. And each one of those had a different interest rate. Some were, say, 3.4, 3.7%. Some were 8.0% or 7.7%. Did I really know how much money I was going to have to be paying back? No. And I'm fairly savvy when it comes to math and numbers. And it's always come easy to me. And I didn't know how much tuition was going to increase when I was there or not increase. I didn't know how many credits I would have to take to graduate. I didn't know I wouldn't graduate. There were so many factors going in, which I'm not saying then relieves me from the liability or responsibility of having to pay back the debt. Obviously, it doesn't. When you take a risk, you assume risk, and that's risky because it may not pay off. 95% of business startups fail within the first 5 to 7 years. Many people, and those loans don't just go away. Most of them don't just go away. And actually, student loans never go away. Even if you file bankruptcy, they don't go away. And listening to Dave Ramsey and his talk show, radio show, and some people that call in asking him for advice, there are people who have called in and said, I'm in $1 million of debt, or I'm in $600 of debt, or $600,000, $900,000 of debt, of student loan debt. And he's just bewildered and flabbergasted. And he's like, how in the world did you think this was a good idea? And they look back and they say, it wasn't. If I had known then what I had known now, my choices would have been different. But the reality is the system lied and pushed you in a direction that may not have been best for you. Didn't look at your individual situation, didn't look at your intelligence level, didn't look at your potential, didn't look at your talents. It just pushed everyone into a one-size-fits-all system because it's an institution that preys on the weak and the dumb. I'm not saying you are. I'm saying the majority of people who are 16, 17, 18 do not have the wherewithal, the capacity, the awareness to understand the decisions they're making. That doesn't happen until you're 25 or even older, until your brain's fully developed. I heard Mike Rowe make a comment about this. He had said, we have a problem in society, especially in terms of university and education. We're loaning money we don't have to people who can't pay it back, preparing them for jobs that won't exist. I'll say that again. We are loaning money we don't have to people who can't pay it back, preparing them for jobs that won't exist. We saw this coming. Everyone saw this coming. 9% of people had a bachelor's degree 30 years ago. 26% or more have one now. They're not valuable anymore in many fields. It shows some degree of dedication and commitment. And if you can thrive in that system, it means you're really good at doing what you're told. However, university pushes you to think outside the box, to challenge your own biases and motivations. And it thrusts upon you the realities of the world that you may not have been opened up to yet if you were sheltered. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing or a good thing. I'm not making any claim to the morality of that or the value of that at all. I'm not making any claim to that, but that's what it does. It forces you to have an open mind or you're eaten alive. And if you have an open mind, it attempts to open your mouth and force something down your throat. So you swallow an ideology that is determined by them. They say what they say, but the reality is, are you better for it? Maybe. What's true? Go to university, they don't even tell you what truth is anymore. Biology. We used to have a truth rooted in biology, in science. We used to have a truth rooted in what we could observe, objectively, what we could observe. in terms of technology and testing and imaging. We used to have truth that we could look at someone or something and say, that is this. And we know because this. It doesn't exist anymore, especially not at the university level. You determine what's true. No one can tell you what's true about you because they're not you. So how would they know what's true about you? And that's dangerous. It's very dangerous. We need to be rooted and grounded in something that is foundational, that will not crumble and fall when challenged. We need to feel secure in what we believe. We need our actions to be motivated by things that are objective to achieve the best possible outcome. If our actions are motivated by subjective things, we're always subject to missing context, misunderstanding, and potentially making the situation worse. And I think that we are making a grave mistake in not, how do I phrase this? I feel that there's a grave mistake being made when we are not unified in the purpose of better change. Change is not always a good thing. Change is always hard, is always new, is always different, but change is not always a good thing. Sometimes it can be, but there's something lost with change. But it can be a good thing. And we need to make sure that what we are changing needs changing and that it can be improved. But then we need to also make sure that the change that we are enacting is bringing it, whatever we're changing, to a better state, a better reality for it having changed. Many things right now in culture are changing. Is culture better for it? Is it? When you look back at all of human history or all of your life and you look at right now, today, when you're listening to this, can you say that this is the best of your life that you've ever experienced? The best relationships? The strongest relationships you've ever had, the most educated you felt, the most confident and secure in technology and truth and what you believe than you've ever been in your entire life? Are we better now than we were 5 years ago, 15 years ago, 25 years ago, 150 years ago? Life is different now. So what change is possible and what change is better that's possible now? I think that most people don't know what change will be better. They might think they know. They might have some ideas and they might be great ideas, but they don't know. And we don't know, and they aren't happening. That's all we know. They're not happening. That's why I started this podcast. This podcast is solely designed to explore potential, understand reality, learn, grow, and implement change that leads us to better outcomes. Maybe in our personal lives, maybe in our social relationships, maybe in our church, synagogue, mosque, maybe in our communities or local cities, maybe in the workplace, maybe in politics, maybe around the world. Change is possible at most times. You have a choice, and your choices affect certain outcomes. But any one person on their own is limited in the change that they alone can bring, can enact. Mark Rober and Jimmy or Mr. Beast have done a lot with their platforms, and it's very commendable. They have made it fun and entertaining to get involved, engaged, and have the attitude of exploration, innovation, and charity. Some people need help. The world needs help. We need help. What change can we bring that will be better than what we have now? And what change is being proposed that won't bring better than what we have now? What change is necessary because of the situation we have now? All I know is we need to have open conversations. We need to give people the benefit of the doubt. We need to, as best as we can, try to identify truth, objective truth, something that we can unify on and that can ground us and be a foundation that won't crack and crumble under pressure. But that can't happen if we believe what we're told. That can't happen if we don't put in the work to find it. The status quo is never going to change unless people act in ways that will change it. What power do you have to change the status quo? Well, you have free speech, free thought. That's power. You have the internet, access to the internet. If you're viewing this, you probably have access to the internet. That's power. You have life and breath and time. That's power. There are some things those in power can never take from you. And it's important to remember that the power that we all have must be used for good. That's it. We, each of us, all of us, need to take responsibility to gain power and then use that power for good. Money is power. Knowledge is power. Access to resources and opportunities is power. Weapons, firearms are power. Many things give us power and authority and influence. But what are we doing with them? Are we causing life to get worse? Are we causing harm? Are we hurting relationships with it? Speaking to myself here, I have certainly not acted at times in ways that benefit my personal relationships. And I think that's true for many people, in that we've all had some form of power that we've had access to, even if we didn't realize it. And we either wasted it or used it in a way that brought more harm than good. Even if that means bringing something good to yourself and harm to other people, that can absolutely still be harmful. And if we keep, I'll say this, the US is a very me-centered society and culture, very us-focused, inward-focused on, not on how can we change to be better for others, but how can others change us. If they come here, they need to learn our language. If they come here, they need to adopt our religion. We don't have to learn about other countries and their histories and other people groups and their cultures. Why? Why do we believe these lies? We're a very materialistic culture. We're a very privileged culture and country in terms of what we have access to. And we need to use that to benefit others. That's it. Use what you have to bring benefit to others. As best as you can, acknowledge that there's some things you can't do on your own. Graciously offer what you can and graciously accept what you need. And let's work together to push toward a better outcome for everyone. This didn't exactly go in the direction that per se that I had kind of anticipated at the beginning, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think too many people are focused on things that don't matter. It's unfair. Why? Okay, but is it better? Maybe. Can you change it? Maybe. If you can't, why worry about it? But if you can, why aren't you? We all need to take responsibility for our own lives, our own actions, our own beliefs, and understand the power that we have to do things that are good and beneficial, or to do things that are harmful. Some people use their power and resources and information and influence and authority to do things that are harmful. That's a reality of life. Even if we don't want it to be true, it's a reality of life. So what are you doing about it? Can you control them? No. Can you control you? Yes. So what are you going to do about it? Are you going to let them bully you? Are you going to let them victimize you? Are you going to let a criminal choose that everyone in your family dies if they want something that you have? Use what you have for good. That's all I can say. And I hope that I do that with this podcast. I hope I'm doing that with this podcast. And I'm making a ton of mistakes, but I hope that those mistakes, one, aren't bringing bad as much as informing on things that are better. I might not be right about everything. I'm probably not. I'm not claiming to be. I want to be wrong, because then I can learn and grow. And that's all I can do. I can choose to have the mindset of humility and compassion and awareness, and all I can do is my best. And if that's not enough, what is? If I can't do it, who can? We, us. There are some things that we have to unite to be able to do. We can't do it on our own. There's strength in numbers. The majority does have power if it's united. Minorities can have power if they unite against a majority. Say a majority of people wanted Larry Elder not to obtain public office. Well, he was the majority leader next in line for it at 19%. But when all the minorities come together that's 81%, up to 81% that didn't want him in office. I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing. I'm not making any claim to that value. I like him. I like his thought-provoking assertions and history and context that he brings. I think he's super smart. And something he said just really motivated me to acknowledge the problems of society, but also acknowledge what I have control over and what I can change. And those are sometimes two very different things. I can't always control the problems in society, but I can control the problems with me. And what is society but a bunch of people who can choose to do the same thing? So I may edit this, I may not. I'm probably going to end up posting this on Monday as my weekly video. Next week, I will go ahead and most likely post part 2 of the discussion I had with Brian McDonald. But I really felt that this week it needed to be addressed. 1, because it was current events, but 2, because even people on the same, quote, side of the aisle are wildly different in their opinions on this thing. And the reality is it better? We don't know. Maybe. Can better come from it? I hope so. But anyway, if you guys like this video, go ahead and drop a like. If you didn't, let me know. You can through dislike too. It was a little bit different. We didn't have a guest on, and there's a bunch of breaks in this if I don't edit it, because I'm still trying to wrap my head around the thing and pause and be intentional in what I say and careful to say something that's beneficial. But if you liked it, drop a like. If you want to see more, definitely subscribe and check out some of our other videos. We post live every Monday, and we're coming to audio podcast soon. I do have this screen, and this screen is actually going to be the outro, and I'll have all that set up at a later time. I'm also trying to work to get a license to a particular song. I don't own the song. I don't claim to own the song, but I'm trying to be able to use it for the podcast. I've loved the song for a long time. And even before I had any hopes and dreams of having a podcast, it was kind of like a theme for my life. And the song is called Out of My Mind by Anthem Lights is the artist that performed it. And they're all great guys, humble and hardworking and talented. And the song that they produced or performed the theme is getting out of your mind and your own head and understanding that you are more when you're part of something bigger than you, and that there's something bigger than you that exists that's worth your time and effort into becoming a part of. Obviously, it's much more than that, but the chorus goes, out of my mind and into your heart. It's not about me. It's not about me. And too much of my past and my life has been about me, my comfort, my goals, my life, what I need, and what I want for my life. And I don't want that to be what my life consists of, what my mind consists of. I want to be able to be more than I could ever be on my own. And so it's meaningful for me to start something that could be bigger than anything I could ever be on my own. And the listeners, you, the viewers, are really what make that possible. I know I said in the last video that I'm not asking for donations or support. And I want to remain in that. I want to encourage you guys to invest in what you see value in. If you see value in this, anything I get will go toward growing myself and this avenue, this venture, this movement that I'm trying to start, or again, be a part of if it's already been started. So if you guys want to support me in that, life costs money, and producing costs money, licenses cost money, and internet, utilities, life, rent, children. I have a family and a child and a wife, and life costs money. And I just want to make sure that I want to make sure to let you guys know that anything you do give, if anything, which I'm not asking for, I'm not going to say no, but I'm not asking for, will go to benefiting more than just myself and money that I receive from this specifically will keep me accountable to that. Just like when I had said I'm going to be posting every Monday, I'm really trying to be accountable to post every Monday, and I have so far. And so money that I receive, if I receive any from this venture, from this podcast, will be specifically for that purpose of going to something that benefits more people than just myself. I don't know what that means yet. I don't know how life will change. I don't know how the economy will change. I don't know how social media will change, or YouTube, or anything really, but I can assure you that it will be invested well and put toward growing this movement and bringing value and truth to as many people as I can. So if you want to get involved, engaged, and have a conversation, I'd love to sit down with you. No matter what you think about me or what I've said or what I believe, I'd still love to sit down with you. I just appreciate the opportunity to talk with people and not be jailed for it, not be killed for it. And that's a reality in much of the world. So yeah, if you want to get involved, if you want to offer advice or continue the conversation, definitely get a hold of me down in the comments. I read and respond to all the comments, or as many as I can. Right now, the channel's still small. I can respond to a lot more than I'll be able to respond to percentage-wise as I continue to grow, if this grows. But I really want to encourage discussions, open, civil discussions, respectful. Be respectful of other people, understand the value that they have, and just do what you can to help everyone be the best they can. And I think that this bill does help people, as it's helping us for now, at least. And there may be some recourse to that later. I guess we'll see. So yeah, drop a like, subscribe, follow, comment. We're also on TikTok and Facebook. You can get a hold of us there. FST Podcast, Free to Speak and Think. You can direct message me on Facebook as well. If you message me through FST Podcast, I might not see it, but if you make a post, I'm still trying to figure out the messaging side of that. But if you make a post or if you comment on any of my videos, I'll see it and respond. So yeah, I think that's about it. I don't have much else. Next week, I will probably be posting the second half of the discussion with Brian McDonald. I've already started editing it, but I thought that this was more important or more urgent to post. And so, and with Brian and with Matt and with Zyro, I mean, the theme continues to talk about education, because personally, I'm pretty passionate about it. I'm passionate about people becoming educated, people learning and growing and identifying truth. And I think what you are educating with yourself with matters. What goes in to your ears or into your brain or into your eyes is what comes out of your actions in most instances. And we need to be careful of what we're allowing in, if that makes sense. We can listen to everyone, but that doesn't mean everyone's always right. I'm not always right. And so we really need to be adamant and determined and dedicated to identifying truth, because it's the only thing that is worth uniting on are aspects of life that are objectively true and good, like freedom and love and forgiveness, mercy, grace, humility, among other things. But anyway, I think that was about an hour and a half. So I will end the podcast and leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you guys next week.